Any declarations of interest? Thank you. Our last meeting was held on the 19th of September. Are those minutes agreed? Thank you very much. We move on to item 4, that's the reference from the Sustainable Communities Overview and Scrutiny Panel, Waste, Recycling and Street Cleaning. I'll move straight on to Councillor Toby Byers.
Thank you, Chair. Just to start by thanking the Chair of Sustainable Communities and all members of the Scrutiny Panel. We had a very comprehensive discussion around the full breadth of issues within the Waste and Street Cleanliness Service, and I think the reference back reflects that. I think the reference also reflects my own perception of the service based on the past 6 months or so and where the particular challenges lie. So notably the point about flats above shops, the point about the estate collection and the street cleansing service in parts of the borough. And I also think it recognises the fact that this isn't an issue that the council or indeed Veolia alone can resolve. It takes a lot of engagement with some of our other partners, notably housing associations. So just on the reference, I will work with the director, and we do intend to bring a short paper back to the next meeting of Sustainable Communities, setting out an update on each of the points in the reference. And that can then form the basis of a further discussion with Veolia present, which I believe is due to happen in the early new year at the next scrutiny meeting after Christmas. So just to finish again by thanking the Chair and all members for a very helpful and constructive reference, and I look forward to continued constructive dialogue.
Thank you very much. I'll pass over to Chris Lee. Did you want to add anything, Chris?
No, only that the actions on all of the recommendations are in hand, and as well as reporting to Cabinet, as Councillor Byers mentioned, we're also aiming to take a short note back to the next scrutiny meeting just to advise them of that and the progress that we're making.
Thank you very much for that. Any Cabinet contributions on this paper? Thank you, and I want to thank the Scrutiny Panel for their work on this item. So we've got recommendation 1. The Cabinet member is happy that we proceed to recommendation 1. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Move on to item 6 whilst we wait for Councillor Welton. I know he's just next door. So item 6, Community Services Market Engagement, and that's between Councillor Kelly Broad and Councillor Toby Byers.
Well, thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by thanking officers for all their work on this today, particularly Richard Ellis. The Council and the CCG currently have a jointly commissioned contract for community services which is held by CLCH, and this is due to expire in March 2021. The Council services currently included within this contract comprise approximately £4 million of public health and CFS services, and these are set out in the paper at 2.14. The Council has been working with the CCG in recent months to explore the potential for an integrated community services contract, which in addition to the services set out at 2.14 would potentially include a far wider range of services set out at 2.17 onwards. This would be both in line with the national ambition to create far more integrated services between health and care, but should also lead to a better, more holistic service to our residents. What this paper is asking Cabinet approval for is to engage in a period of market engagement in order to test the capacity and appetite of the providers to provide such a contract and to help further define the services that it might comprise. Cabinet is only being asked at this stage to approve the engagement exercise, and should that lead to any procurement, that would be subject to a separate Cabinet decision. I'm very happy to commend this to colleagues and recommend that we proceed to the market engagement.
Kelly, did you want to add anything? Okay, thank you. On item 6, Community Services Market Engagement, we'll come back to item 5, where I think it's Martin and Ellie will talk on that one. So, Hannah, did you want to add anything? And Rachel? No? Okay. Well, item 6, any Cabinet member contributions? Thank you. Item 6 is Community Services Market Engagement. recommendation 1, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We move back to item 5, Road Safety Task Group, and I'd like Councillor Martin Welton and Councillor Ellen Stringer, as this has implications for schools, to contribute. Councillor Welton.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to this report, I'd like to firstly thank the work of the Road Safety Task Group for this extensive scrutiny report that they have produced. It's an issue which I know is of concern to many councillors, but also as well in terms of parents who have children at schools and schools themselves. I think we've been credited with the amount of work that schools have actually done in terms of road safety, but we as a council have actually been very proactive on that matter. Recently we've seen the introduction of safer school safety zones outside for schools in the borough, but also as well in terms of greater enforcement in terms of waiting restrictions outside schools, because having a safe and secure environment is essential for schools in this borough. In relation to the recommendations, we're quite content with many of the recommendations that have been made by the panel. A lot of this work is already being undertaken, but we did have some slight issues with I think recommendation 16 in terms of obviously staggered start times for schools. Schools would need to develop their collaboration with each other and undertake consultation with the school community before actually agreeing to that. So that was one of the things obviously we did flag up. So I think this report is a good report. I'd like to thank the scrutiny panel again for all its work, and we look forward obviously to working with these recommendations going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart, did you want to add anything?
Just briefly to say, also thank the heads and the schools who took part in the task group and gave their time on this as well. And it's very gladdening to see this road safety is not a high priority, high numbers issue in Merton, and it's great to see that. But there's always more that we can do, particularly when it has the dual purpose of also improving air quality, if we can raise some of these issues. So like Martin raised some concerns about 16, also there's another recommendation 7 where I think it wants us to employ lots of lollipop men and women, and or see if we can get volunteers to do that instead, and that's not something that we can do directly, because unless they're employed by us, they're not allowed to close the roads. But other than that, it's a really useful report, and we'll continue to work on it.
Thank you very much. And increasingly, I think it's your area. Did you want to add anything?
All I need to say is, Councillor Stringer, that road safety is very good in Merton. But this is a report which is seeking to make it even better. And we're happy to, as the officers of commentary on the following, agree all of the recommendations and proceed in that excellence.
Yeah.
So as paragraph 2.5 says, this is an area where we're already very good.
The Cabinet Member contributing. Councillor McCauley.
Briefly to say that I was very pleased to see that there were school patrols, 4 school patrols outside Hatfield, and as I've been a school governor in Hatfield for 25 years, I was delighted that the head of Hatfield participated in it and we were awarded silver. I was a bit disappointed that the ward I represent, Bond, was not considered with any accreditation.
Well, thank you for that. Well, we'll see whether we can later. So we're on any more cabinet contributions. We're on item 5, Road Safety Task Group. Recommendation A. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We covered item 6, and now we're on item 7, consultation on statements of community involvement. Councillor Martin Welton.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously I formally move the recommendations as set out in the report. The statement of community involvement sets out how the council will involve local people, local businesses, stakeholders and other interested parties when preparing development planning documents and submitting planning applications. These are a legal requirement and form part of the evidence base that supports local plans. This is the first time we have reviewed this plan since 2006, and I'd like to place on record my thanks to the Borough Plan Advisory Committee for the work they have actually undertaken, obviously in looking at this statement. This draft contains how and when the Council will involve local communities, businesses, voluntary sectors and other interested parties in the production and development planning documents, for example local plans and supplementary planning documents on submitted planning applications, the planning process, the constraints imposed by regulations and planning policies nationally, but also as well at the GLA level, how we provide feedback to comments made during consultation, and the consultation methods to be used. Clearly since 2006 a lot of our communication methods have changed quite considerably, especially with the growth of the internet, but also the ability to respond online and using those methods, whereby many years ago when I was first on the council a lot of it was with pen and paper. So I think it's very useful in terms of how this document brings it actually up to date, and I ask Cabinet to approve this document here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walton. I now turn to Chris Lee. Did you want to add anything to this paper? Thank you. Any Cabinet contributions on this paper that moved us from facts to Twitter? No, thank you. We're on item 7, it's a consultation on statement of community involvement. We're faced with recommendations A, B and C. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Walton's on the roll here. We're on item 8, Merton's Playing Pitch Strategy 2019. Councillor Welton.
I formally move the recommendations as set out in the report. The Playing Pitch Strategy forms part of our evidence base for the new local development plan. It has joint responsibility with Council Cooper Marvier. It's the first time that this has been updated since 2011. Since then there has been a number of changes to the National Policy Framework and updates to the predicted population growth from Merton, resulting in the need for a revised plan. This strategy itself looks at playing fields across the borough in terms of assessing need for outdoor grass and artificial playing pitches. It's also as well important to know who owns sites within the borough: cricket, rugby union, football, hockey. As a borough, we're very lucky in obviously the number of playing fields we do have here in Merton, which allows sports to be played. Many of them are rightfully restricted in terms of their use, but also as well when we're looking to create future demand. We've obviously seen in terms of playing pitches recently the opening of Morley Park, which provided much needed youth facilities, playing field facilities for the Ursuline School, along with providing a youth park. The timetable for this was considered at the Borough Plan Advisory Committee on the 12th of September, and again I'd like to place on record my thanks for all the work that they have undertaken. Clearly this is a key component to our local development plan, and I ask Cabinet here this evening to approve this document. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Turn to Chris Lee. Could you just elaborate on that Morley Park opening and how the girls at Ursuline got to those playing fields?
Well, it was a key part of our negotiation, really, that we wanted that to become public open space and an assessment of need in the borough in terms of school access to playing pitches. Identified that there was a deficit there, and we were able to secure that and make it available to Ursuline. And just to follow on from that, and add to Councillor Welton's comments, whilst this is a key spatial planning document which will assist us in terms of land use allocation for the future, it's also an essential document in supporting bids for external funding to support the development of sport on these pitches, because the sports governing bodies will very closely involved in the development of this assessment of need and demand in the borough, and will be chairing the advisory body going forward. And with this evidence base, it should help us enormously in being able to lobby and secure additional resource where that demand is evident, where we wish to bring those pitches forward for that intensification.
Thank you. Councillor Caroline Cooper-Marbe.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to say thanks, Officer, for this report, because I think the strategy will do a lot for our residents in terms of making sure that they continue to have access to high quality facilities here in our borough. And also it's great to see that we are working with important sporting bodies such as Sport England, and I think that's great for Merton and great for our residents and sports in our borough as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other cabinet contributions? Okay, thank you. I was at the opening of Morley Park. It was a great day to hand over public space to girls at the Ursuline School, and then when they're finished with it, the residents get their time on it, but primarily for the girls at Ursuline School. I'm very, very pleased with that. Okay, so we're on item 8, Merton's Playing Pitch Strategy 2019, and that we adopt this strategy. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We now move on to item 9, Business Plan 2020-2024. Councillor Mark Allison.
Thank you, Leader, and I'd like to start by expressing our thanks and gratitude towards the many officers who've been involved in drawing up the business plan for 2020 to 2024. It's a very difficult task every year to go through the figures once again and analyse how the finances look into the future. They operate in a very business-like fashion, and we appreciate all that they do for us. So please pass that on to staff members on our behalf. By being very business-like in the way that we deliver our budgets, we have over the years been able to continue to maintain a relatively high level of services, and to continue to have the support of local residents for the work that we have to do. They understand that these have not been easy times for local authorities with the austerity that's been going on. But I think there is a level of satisfaction in the community, and a level of pride that Merton is a great place for families and for everyone who lives and works here. And by running our budget in a business-like way, we've been able to do things like deliver a new leisure centre in Morden, new library in Colliers-Wood, and maintain some services that other local authorities have struggled to continue with. However, we are at a very difficult period, not just for us, obviously for the country as well. And so these are very hard times. If we look at the starting position where we were, if you like, in March, and what we thought was likely to happen, on page 16 it outlines that we anticipated that this year we would have to make relatively modest savings in the coming year of £1.1 million, rising to £7.6 million by 23-24. However, if you then go on to the table on page 31, after going through the calculations of what's happened in the meantime, our current estimate of what the savings will need to be is £5.1 million, a five-fold increase in savings that are required in the coming year, rising to £19.9 million by 2023 to 24, which is a trebling of the amount that we would need to save. The one thing that I would say, and I know that many of us have heard it already from the Director of Finance, is that there's an enormous amount of uncertainty at the moment. And you know, when we were here in March, we'd anticipated that the government by now would have told us what the multi-year funding settlement for councils would be, and they've only actually, in reality, delivered this information about 1 year ahead, which makes life very difficult to plan for. We've clearly got a great deal of uncertainty around well, who's going to be the government by the time that we reach a decision over the budget in March. And evidently the proposals for Brexit are going to have an enormous impact on the country's economy, and therefore the resources available for public services like those that we provide. There was a report over the weekend that was indicating that with the deal that's being negotiated by the current Prime Minister, although how long he's going to be Prime Minister, who knows, but by the current Prime Minister would bring the country's GDP down by around about 6%, which is pretty much in line with what happened immediately after the crash back in 2008. That hit the global economy back then. So that was the global economy. This is going to be our economy, taking a hit of perhaps 6%. And also I think I read somewhere else that there had been suggestions that we were already around about 2 or 3% below what our GDP would have been if we hadn't voted for Brexit. A large part of that is down to the uncertainty of knowing what the future is, but also down to the shambolic way that it's been handled. And that impact is having a major effect on our ability to plan 3 and 4 years in advance what kind of services we're going to provide. So at this stage, although the level of savings that we estimate could be as much as £19.9 million, those figures don't include certainty over what our business rates are going to be. The government indicated some time ago that we'd be able to get 100% of the business rates and retain them. Now it looks like we might be able to get 75%, although that decision would be deferred. We don't know what ability there is really going to be over preset, and what the rules will be on how any preset could be spent. We don't know what the government's position is on the DSG, which is an increasing concern for councils like ours. And so in that position of great uncertainty, we are proposing at this stage savings that we think are reasonable and would be reasonable in pretty much all cases. And those savings total to around about £3.6 million by the end of the 4-year medium-term financial strategy. Those are very difficult. It's very difficult to make savings at all, but we feel they're the most reasonable savings, and they're outlined from page 51 of this document. I should say that all of these savings are subject to proper equalities impact assessment. I'm very pleased to have Councillor Attawar helping with the equalities assessment in her new role, and that will be very helpful to us. I would say that at this stage we'd anticipate that it's very unlikely that we're going to be able to find savings that won't have an impact on prescribed groups, because so much of what the council does at the moment is targeted at helping people from vulnerable groups. It's logical that any reduction in the service that the council provides is likely to hit them, and to be honest, the government needs to take responsibility for the loss in funding which is hitting our local residents in that way. So these savings, they again meet the criteria that we normally have trying to protect services for the vulnerable. It's very important to us that we try our best to bridge the gap, or at least make the gap between those who are well off and least well off in our borough. Make sure that gap is minimised. So we'll continue to do that. We're asking for savings to be weighted so that services to children and those in social care are less than they are for the rest of the authority. I think that's a very important thing that we've adhered to over the years, and I think that makes a difference to people's lives. However, I have to say at this stage that this may very well only be the start of the savings. There'll be a new round coming forward after the budget that's been scheduled for November the 6th. We'll be recommending some additional savings, I think, for the December cabinet meeting, and those in turn will go to scrutiny in January. Hopefully, the news is good. I'm, as you can imagine, a little bit sceptical about that, but I would reassure all of you here that our priorities certainly remain to ensure that Merton continues to be a great place for our families, and that we continue to provide services that we can be proud of, and that we continue to bridge the gap between those who are least well off and everyone else in our authority. And so, with the caveat that the Equalities Impact Assessment is being delivered in time for the scrutiny meeting rather than as part of these papers, I propose the recommendations.
Thank you very much. I'm going to our finance Caroline Holland to give us a sprinkling of certainty. Can you?
Need someone else?
The only certainty I can give you is that these numbers will change. So I suppose it's certainly more challenging than it ever has been. So whilst we have information for 1 year, and the technical consultation is out, and even that has thrown up some changes from what we originally thought. Some confirmation around the new homes bonus, the amount of money we will get for 2021 will not continue into future years, so that will definitely look to reduce as we go forward. And for one thing that we've got in this report, which we haven't had for a number of years, on page 30 is a table showing the amount of growth that we're currently bringing forward. There'll be a further growth table in the December cabinet papers as well. But even this, so the new burdens funding we've got to offset the DSG deficit, there's been a technical paper which has come out consulting on DSG and deficits and how we treat them, with a closing date of mid-November. So even that can change the position on which we look at the DSG. But we still have to submit our revised recovery plan. Our share of the 700 million is less than we originally thought it was going to be. So quite where it leaves a deficit, even if we may not have to fund it, which could actually then outweigh all of our reserves, is an interesting technical challenge that the DFE and MHCRG will need to consult on and agree how we deliver on that. We've also got the draft bids for the capital programme, which are shown on page 81, so that's for scrutiny also to have a look at, and some of the priorities which are coming forward in particular areas. And one in there is also expansion of our special schools to assist with the rise in our EHCPs, but even that isn't sufficient to deal with the growing demand that we have, but the challenges in trying to find a new school site, I'm sure everyone will remember what they are. On page 31, that sets out how the gap has changed from what we brought to Council in March to what we are now saying. And obviously the biggest item there is the growth that we've built in pressures at this stage. We are utilising the majority of our balance in the budget reserve. So the additional monies that we had from the outturn variances last year and the monies from the business rates pilot surplus we put into that balance in the budget reserve. Clearly, as the pilot is no longer continuing at the 75% basis, that limits the amount of money we can have going forward to assist us with some of the challenges that we have. The budget that's been announced for the 7th of November, there's already talk that if we leave without a deal, that budget may need to be moved. So we are working on the basis that we think there will be an announcement of the monies we will get in early December, but again that may be still impacted by a general election. So yes, sprinkling the certainty is certainly a challenge. So the work on the equality assessments is being finalised and will be available for dispatch of the 22nd of October for the first scrutiny panel, and all of them will be available for all of the scrutiny panels, so we will do it on that basis as we go forward. We have also updated the capital funding for the bids that are in front of you as well, and looked at some of the other items. So you have the revised and updated business plan timetable set out on page 50, so you can see when we'll be coming back with either further updates and the final, what we hope would be the final round of savings for the December Cabinet to enable scrutiny to have a look. But if there are changes to the timetable, that in itself could be quite challenging if we have to bring additional savings forward at a very late stage in the process. We're hopeful at this stage that we won't have to, but we cannot rule anything out at this moment in time. So as you can see, we do have a revised gap setting out what that will be on page 31. So that's certainly the challenges ahead of us. Hopefully as we go through scrutiny, we'll get some feedback, and the draft EAs again will work with the Cabinet member, and scrutiny will help us finalise those for consideration in Council in March. Thank you.
Very much. Yeah, it's a very, very tough times, but we do rely on scrutiny to go through these. We've got 2 rounds of scrutiny, and Councillor Atawar will be working closely. The scrutiny will be poring over the qualities impact assessments, so what we agreed today is subject to those all being worked on, so we'll put forward to scrutiny in good time. Huge deal of uncertainty facing not just this council but many other councils. As Councillor Allison has said, we have an eye to be business-like, to bridging the gap, looking after those who need our help, and to continuing to make this a great place for families in particular. Are there any contributions from, I know Cabinet members will be going through all this in their own particular fields, but are there any contributions now? Councillor Edith McCauley.
Just quickly, Caroline, I know you mentioned that we all know there's a bit of uncertainty of what's going on. We know that the Chancellor has now earmarked a possible budget on the 6th of November, depending on the outcome of Brexit. What I want to hear from you is what are the consequences for the Council if an announcement is made that there is no funding then until after the general election. You mentioned there might be news in December. What happens if there's an election and a government, whoever wins the election, you know, what party, I don't know, wins the election and there's a possible new chancellor? What are the consequences of funding? Well, it's just, I just want to know the worst case scenario.
So if I had the actual answer to that, I'd sort of be off down the bookies, I think. And that's the challenge that we've got. So we had a meeting with MHCLG officials last week. So planning the various scenarios is quite difficult. So what we are saying at the moment is based on the information that we had in the settlement, in some ways the budget may be a little bit irrelevant for the settlement purposes. So we are saying, locally, you've told us how much money we're going to get, you've given various announcements about grant levels, it is now too late to change that by the time we get to December. So one way or another we have to have an announcement of funding for 2021. So our priority is looking to balance 2021 because that's the actual year we have to deliver the balanced budget. So when you look at some of the savings that are coming forward, we've got a particular focus on 2021 and how we get through that. So that's when we've got sort of 2.3 million of savings coming forward for that year. We'll be working closely and probably up to the wire in December to make sure that if there is an announcement that comes through, what we can do on that basis. And it is then working with my departmental colleagues to see what can come forward on a short-term basis if the worst case scenario happens around we do not get a funding announcement. But I cannot see that being the real worst case scenario because local authorities would not government cannot let local authorities go forward on that basis. So some funding would have to come forward, and what we're saying is, you've told us this, we need to have at least this, and then what happens with the business rates resettlement, the reset, and the fair funding, that may get pushed further down the line.
Okay.
But give us the money for 2021, at least that, and then we can plan on that basis.
Okay.
Councillor Wilson.
Last week, the government announced that it was going to put the public loan workboard interest rate from 1 to 2%. And what are some potential financial implications to the council going forward from that announcement?
So certainly we are looking at the impact that has on us. So it was a 1% increase on all PWLB rates with immediate effect. So luckily we weren't actually going out to externally borrow this year. So there were some authorities, one authority was borrowing £50 million on Friday. So that has been directly impacted. It is having a significant impact on other authorities who have HRA and looking to do housing, social housing. It's had a major impact on those. So I understand Southwark is an additional £9 million for them per year. But if you look at our current Treasury Management Strategy, we weren't looking to externally borrow, but it may have an impact on the works we're doing for the Morden development and the financial viability for that, and any other areas where we're looking to work in partnership with some of our colleagues may have an impact on the financial viability of those schemes. Certainly as our resources and our cash balances come down and we look to have to borrow externally, rates will be higher, and therefore either further savings found or reductions in capital programme spend.
Okay. Any further cabinet contributions to cheer us up? It is tough. We will get through it. It is very, very tough. There will be some very, very difficult choices, and local government, especially Labour local government, shows the way forward in having an eye to looking after those who need our help, and we will continue to do that for as long as we can. But these are very tough. So I want to thank the cabinet member, finance, the director of finance, and everyone working on these issues as well, with regard to all the information we have to hand. So we are on item 9. It's the business plan 2020. There are 8 recommendations. Are they agreed? Thank you. We move to our final item for the cabinet meeting, and that's financial management task group report for August 2019. Councillor Mark Allison.
Thank you, Leader, and again, thank you to Caroline, Roger, and everybody in each of the departments that keeps a track on current spending and current budgets. It's a key part of the way that we operate a business-like budgeting approach, and it does help us to have an understanding over time of where the pressures are, and that leads into the budget process when we were talking earlier about some of the pressures for growth, where there's regular overspends or underspends. You can look to see whether actually we've set the actual budget for that section at the appropriate level, and you can use the budget process to change that. Thank you to everybody. There's been a modest change in the projections going forward to the end of the year. So we're looking at a very small potential underspend by the end of the year. But to put it into context, it's less than half of a tenth of a percent of our gross budget. So the windfall, if you like, if that is the final amount, is extremely modest, and of course it would just be a one-off windfall anyway. With that in mind, thank you to everybody. We're some way into the year now, but clearly not anywhere near far enough to be able to make reliable predictions exactly as to where we're going to end up. But the work that's been done so far is very helpful at this stage in the financial year as we look forward to future years. Thank you for everything.
Thank you very much. I'll now move to the Director of Finance, Caroline Holland.
Thank you. I suppose I would just draw your attention to the monitoring that we are doing of the savings and making sure that they are either sort of being progressed or where they are not being progressed, that directors will bring forward alternatives as part of the movement towards the medium-term financial strategy and ensuring the savings that we have built into that are deliverable. Whilst it's good news that we've actually moved to a positive variance against the budget, we have had an increase in the DSG deficit of nearly 700,000. So work continues in that area, working closely with Rachel and her colleagues to see how we can better monitor the information to make sure that what we're bringing forward helps us in that area. And in light of the declaration of the climate change emergency, we're reviewing the type of boilers needed in this building, and so therefore that's the reason for some of the slippage into next year whilst we're reviewing the specification and what's actually needed.
Thank you. Any cabinet contributions on this monthly report? Yes, Councillor Caroline Cooper-Marbert.
Thank you, Chair. Caroline, just wanted to draw your attention to page 91 regarding the libraries, the Old-Stemple libraries, and wanted you to comment on that, please.
So, in light of the change of approach, so with the way that libraries are reduction in staff, increase in volunteers and security around those, there's been increasing those costs. There will be a contract relet which is coming forward and coming back to Cabinet, I think, or maybe, just trying to think, the relet of that contract with either sort of director approval or Cabinet approval, so we'll see if there's any increase in costs, further costs associated with that. But they're part of the overall contract to try and minimise the impact of those. And then some of the energy costs in our libraries in general, there's in a similar situation with some other energy costs increasing as well. So we're trying to work closely with Anthony to make sure that we are able to control those costs.
Okay. Any further cabinet contributions? Thank you. We're on item 10, it's our final item for this cabinet meeting. Financial Manager Task Group Report, August 2019. Can I have my thanks to everyone's work on this? We have two recommendations, A and B, and they agree. Thank you. That concludes our cabinet meeting. Thank you very much.